From creating deeply healing flower essence remedies guided by divine nature to working with clients from across the world, always being guided to her when the time's right. I'm so very pleased and grateful to give a really warm welcome to Triona Martin, a wonderfully wise shamanic practitioner, healing guide and teacher. Hello Triona.
How are you today?
I'm brilliant. How are you on the way over in Cyprus?
I'm good. It's extremely hot today, so I gave in and I put on the aircon this afternoon. So,
have you been trying to hold out?
Yeah, I've just been using a fan. It's been sufficient, but it just was over the top this afternoon. Temperatures are very high here at the moment, and also we've had a lot of really bad fires near Limassol and up in the hillsides near Paphos, so they're still burning. Some villages have been, evacuated completely. A couple of people dead, houses completely burned down. It's been really, really bad.
Wow. So they're quite high then, the temperatures.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's how it is today.
Yeah. We'll dedicate our thoughts and energy to all of those who need help.
Exactly.
So thank you so much for taking the time to come on to the episode. I'm so excited. I'm so excited to have a conversation with you because I remember about 13 years ago, through Michelle, who's my friend, I got in contact with you, and thanks to you guiding me in the direction, I was able to work on that heart area, that's area, and you put me in contact with one of my spirit animals. I'm sure they're still there, which was a black panther. I was thinking,
right.
Yes, you probably don't remember with all of your clients.
Well, usually the strange thing is, Sarah, if somebody did work with me years ago and then I don't see them for a long time, and as soon as I hear their voice, it's like a book opens and it's all there.
Yeah.
And unfortunately with you, I couldn't even remember, was it in Ireland or was it here? I mean,
it was online as well. So we didn't actually see each other face to face. It was all online. So that's understandable.
Okay. Mea culpa in that one.
No. And I even think we connected through phone. I don't know if it was even through video, because it was 13 years ago. So I'm not sure if we even went down the video stage back then.
Okay, that would make sense then to me. Yeah.
Amazing. So can you explain a little bit about what you do? I know you explained it to me already, but just for people who might be listening, who it's the first time they've ever heard about shamanism.
Okay. Well, shamanism is the world's most ancient spiritual practice. And of course, when we use the word spiritual, we're not talking about religious. We're talking about spirit being energy. And so it's a practice that has gone on for thousands of years in the indigenous cultures, particularly. And thanks to anthropologists who have studied these indigenous cultures for many years, particularly people like Michael Harner, Marcia Eliade, and written books about it and about their experiences, what they discovered studying cultures worldwide, everywhere from Siberia to South America to Africa, wherever it was, even though these particular communities don't have any connection with each other via internet or phones or getting on a plane and going somewhere, they're totally isolated from each other. But yet the anthropologists discovered that there are many red threads that run throughout their practices in similarities. So if we take it down to the basics, first of all, the word shamanism is a word that anthropologists have chosen to use to describe this phenomenon that happens worldwide. And the word shaman comes from a Siberian word from the Tungus tribe, which is saman, or the one who sees. Okay. Now, in these indigenous cultures, for example, in Africa, they wouldn't know themselves as shamans. They may be known locally as sangomas. In South America, they, depending on what they work with in their practice, they might be known as maestros, maestras, curanderos, ayahuasqueros. But again, they don't know themselves as shamans. So that word seems to only be used in Western culture. Now, with regard to that word, I think it's very important to stress that in Western culture, we don't call ourselves shamans. I never call myself a shaman. I'm a shamanic practitioner.
Yeah.
And nor do I call myself a healer.
Okay.
The reason being, it's sort of known that it's more an ego statement to use that term. However, the communities and the circles and the groups and the people that I serve, if they wish to refer to me as a shaman and a healer, that's perfectly okay. But I will never do that. So when they have studied these indigenous cultures, they've realized that one of the main things is that they work very much with what they have surrounding them, what Mother Nature has given us. So in many of these communities, they work with what we call sacred plants. And they differ worldwide, depending on what region they're from. They also, what is similar in each community is the shaman, and I will use that word to cover them all. The shaman has always known there is more to reality than what we see. There are other realities, and we can access those other realities to gain information, help, healing, guidance, etc. For ourselves, for the people we work for the community, and on a larger scale. The shaman also knows that anything that is alive, it has got energy, and if it's got energy, it's spirit. So, for example, when large pharmaceutical companies travel to places like the rainforest and they meet the little shaman living in his hut, and they say to him, well, you know, how do you know this plant cures cancer? And the shaman will say, it told me. So they're very in tune with the spirit of the plants, the trees, the shrubs, the earth, the elements of earth, air, fire, and water. And they work very closely with these as what we would call allies or helpers. And in the indigenous communities, the shaman's role, whether he or she is the shaman, is as guide, healer, psychopomp. If it's a nomadic tribe, they will also have the role of finding out where is the best place to move to, etc. They will work very much, as I said earlier, with what they have in their vicinity with regard to plant energy, plant healing, etc. Some of the main ways the shaman will work is obviously with healing. And they also work a lot with ritual. For example, where in Western culture we will celebrate things like birthdays and weddings and births, the shaman will celebrate in the community when a young girl becomes a young woman, when a young boy becomes a young man. They celebrate the process of death as well as birth. That's where psychopomp work comes in. So helping the soul to pass over peacefully and to go where it needs to go. There are two main types of healing that generally would happen, not just in indigenous communities, but also in Western culture. And these two main things would be what we call extraction and also soul work. So extraction first. When the shaman, whether he be male or female, looks at the person who has come to them for help, they can tell by looking with their inner vision whether there is what they call an intrusion in the body. And they talk about the person being diseased. So their body is not at ease with itself. Their energy is not the way it should be. Now, it doesn't particularly matter what has caused that disease in the body. The shaman will see it in a particular form that he or she knows shouldn't be in the body. So therefore they will extract it. And in the process of the extraction, they don't leave a void, they must put in something healing, because Mother Nature doesn't like a void. If there's a void, something will come in again. So basically extract and put in healing. And that can cover anything from a physical complaint, an emotional, a spiritual, a mental, a sexual complaint. It doesn't matter. If there's something there that shouldn't be there, it looks completely different, it looks wrong, they will extract it and put in healing. And so healing can cover many, many things. Also, we can have healing on a community level, we can have healing on a much larger level. The shaman will also do things like healing buildings, for example. If there's a sense that there's something wrong in the building, that maybe there's a spirit who hasn't passed over. Or the other type of work they would do is removing hexes or spells, because that can cause severe problems for somebody in their life, not just on a physical level. It can affect them emotionally, it can affect their relationships, it can affect their business or their job. So obviously that needs to be removed and positive power, put in to help that person. When we talk about soul work, a very simple example would be if we in Western culture think of ourselves when we were kids and we fall and we cut our knee and we come running home crying, and mommy or daddy takes us in, cleans us up, put a plaster on it, and off you go and play again. That's it. In an indigenous culture, this child falls, same thing happens. Obviously, they'll use herbs or healing plants, but then the shaman will check that there is no what they call soul loss. Okay? Now, if we talk about the soul as being our essence, so if anything happens to us in life, like having a fall when we're a child, to something as serious as a death in the family, a breakup of a relationship, a suicide, any sort of abuse, whether it be emotional, mental, physical or sexual abuse, can cause part of the essence to break off and stay stuck in the place where the problem originated from. The other word would be soul fragmentation. So the shaman will go looking for that soul part and try and persuade it to come back with the assurance that the person is ready to take care of it now. Okay? So they would be the two main healings that would be most commonly known. So obviously ritual and celebration and these sort of things are used. In the indigenous cultures, they would also, through their dress and the tools they use, would be very unique to the particular community. When I was in Peru in 2011 and 12, I worked with two different types of shamanic cultures. And one of those cultures was in Cusco. And I happened to be carrying a bag that I had bought in Lima. And the shaman I met with that day knew immediately I had come from Lima through the design of the fabric of the bag. So those cultures in South America, you know, even their dress is expressing who they are shamanically and who they are as a community. In Siberia also, they would wear a lot. A lot is to do with how they're dressed, and everything they wear is symbolic of their actual practice. Some things can be for protection, some things can be to do with their allies or their helpers. Obviously in Western culture, we don't. So I think it's important to stress personally, because everything I will say today is coming from my personal experience. I never use or adopt or steal any other culture's ways in my shamanic practice, purely and simply because it's worthless in my practice. By that I mean, I'll give you an example. In North America, in various Indian cultures, they have things like the rain dance, the ghost dance. There's various ceremonial dances they do. Now, I remember many, many years ago when I first set up my very first shamanic website, which was really basic. I kept getting a lot of emails from Native Americans who had come across the website and were very upset and angry that an Irish person was doing this. And I very clearly explained, I don't use your ways, I don't steal your ways in my practice. And one in particular, I had a series of emails with him, and he told me how some English people had come and they had allowed them to come into their community, and they witnessed a particular dance which they performed ceremoniously. And these people then went back to their own country, hired out a field, decided to do the same thing, got people to come and pay for it. And of course, it was useless. So these sort of rituals and ceremonies that shamanic cultures have, they have been specifically given to them by spirit. So they would purposefully have connected with the spirit to get a ritual or a ceremony to celebrate or to create or to stop, for example, rain dance, to bring on the rains for their crops, etc. So again, I stress, I don't steal any other culture's ways in my own practice. So, there's so much more I could say about the Indigenous communities, but bringing it over now to Western culture, my experience in how it works in Western culture, because it has become very popular, particularly in Ireland, England, some European countries, where people can go and do training workshops and learn some basic shamanic skills, some advanced shamanic skills. So a lot of the techniques used in the Indigenous cultures can be used for Western culture, because we all need healing. We all have problems, whether they be physical problems, emotional, mental, etc. So we all need help at some times in our lives. Shamanic practice develops as a community demands. Now, by that I mean, before I moved to Cyprus 15 years ago, I ran my own practice in Ireland for over 10 years. I had a weekly circle. We'd meet every Thursday night. It was a group that had done training with me or one-to-one work with me, and they came together in a private, confidential setting to work with each other, to work on their own problems or issues. I also ran basic workshops, advanced training, and I introduced the first shamanic counselling training in Ireland, which was a year-long training. Because I myself had done shamanic counselling training with another teacher, which was only 5 or 6 days long. And my feeling at the end of it was, I don't feel this is sufficient for me to be able to help somebody. So I put together my own training, which was done over a year and involved quite a lot of reading, quite a lot of study, a lot of experiential training for those doing it, both sides of the fence, taking the role of the client and taking the role of the counsellor. So, I had my practice in Ireland. I knew how to work with the people that were coming to me. And it was quite interesting when I moved to Cyprus that even though there are a lot of similarities between Ireland and Cyprus, in that they're both small islands, they're both divided, they're both religious but yet superstitious. However, the economics are different, the culture is different, the traditions are different. So I had to change in many ways how I work with Cypriots as to how I worked with Irish people. And I had to adapt to suit what I was meeting in people. So working here now for 15 years, it's only a small percentage of people would be Cypriot that come to me, probably maybe at the most 10%, I would think. Most of my clients are from all over Europe or America, South America, North America, which means I work a lot online. A lot of Russians, a lot of Europeans, so very few Cypriots. But the one thing in common with the Cypriots that come to me is they have what's called the evil eye on them. Okay, so I spoke briefly earlier about hexes and spells. It's a similar thing. It's very common in sort of the Mediterranean countries, particularly North African countries and Cyprus. So the evil eye can create a lot of problems for people. And generally how it happens, because it's a culture that is superstitious, therefore they live in this constant state of, if anything goes wrong in their life, oh, somebody has put the evil eye on me. So the evil eye is basically a spell or a hex put on somebody by somebody through jealousy or through just hatred or negativity. There are a lot of people on the island, if you pay them enough, they will put a hex on somebody. However, I'm the only one that can remove them. Oh. Unless you want to go to a Greek Orthodox priest.
Okay.
And certainly my experience has been that the hex isn't necessarily removed that way. But for me, the most important part of working with this, with a client, is re-educating them not to be in a place of fear the whole time. Because when you step into fear, you step out of your power. So you're in the kitchen and you drop a cup and it smashes. No, you don't necessarily have the evil eye on you. You just drop the cup and it smashed. So it's about just re-educating how they see things and not to constantly live in this place of fear. You know, that once you're in your power, there's no reason to be in fear. So what else can I tell you about working in Western culture? You know, everybody's time with me is totally unique to them. It depends what they're bringing to the table. Some people come because they have an actual problem they want help with. Some people come because they want to learn a skill, and that's where shamanic counselling comes in. So I will facilitate them learning the skill in order for them to take away something tangible that they can use to help themselves in their lives.
Very interesting. That's very interesting. One thing that came into my mind there when you were saying that, I suppose shamanic practitioners or shamans receive the medicine through the plants. Have you received any specific medicine in Cyprus through different plants, or not necessarily because your clients are international?
Well, I have. I actually make flower essences shamanically.
Yeah.
And my interest in flower essences started 40 years ago. And it was really through my two children, because as babies, they both were very asthmatic. And at the time, I wasn't prepared, let's say, to accept that the only way to treat them was with steroids. So I went searching and heard about homeopathy, and I took them to a homeopathic doctor. So I thought, okay, I'm getting both sides of the coin here. I'm getting the medical practice plus the homeopathic training. And because the homeopathy sorted out their asthma at the time, and I purposely do that because, you know, with information and education, you realize these things are not just, okay, you've got asthma and that's it. So I had to look at their diet, change certain things, and obviously build up their immune systems. And when I saw that the homeopathy was working so well for them, it opened up my interest in other natural things. And the one thing I was very drawn to were the Bach or Bach flower remedies. And I found that I just was drawn to them. So every time I had an opportunity or the money to do it, I was buying up some of the essences. And I found myself picking them up and holding them and putting them back and not really doing anything with them except obviously connecting with them. However, I found with my daughters that they both instinctively knew what they needed with the essences, which was quite interesting. So that, of course, flamed my interest even more. So I always found homeopathy and flower essences very, very powerful to use. Even though I tried an awful lot of other natural things, I sort of gone for 6 sessions of reflexology or aromatherapy or metamorphic technique, you name it, I tried it. But I would keep coming back to the homeopathy and the flower essences. And I suppose no surprise now, because you're working with the energy of the substance as opposed to an actual herb or a toxic substance. So when I moved to Cyprus, I didn't have any thoughts about flower essences in terms of making them. However, I kept being what I call nudged by this particular plant, hibiscus, and it was particularly the red flowered hibiscus. So eventually I bought 3 plants. And I made sure to buy them in a place that, they weren't being affected by dust from the road or traffic or anything like that. And I started to care for them. And I just kept looking at them and I kept being drawn to them. And eventually I thought, I need to see what this is about. So I did connect with the plant shamanically. And I met the spirit of the plant, who showed herself as a beautiful, tall female dressed in beautiful gown, a long gown. And I said, okay, you keep nudging me. What do you want me to do? So she said she wanted me to make an essence. So I said, well, how do you want me to make it? So she told me exactly how to make it. So I did. And that was in 2010, the year I moved here. And I bottled up the 2 what are called mother tinctures. So I had 2 huge big bottles of mother tincture. And I kind of labeled them and put them aside. And I didn't feel drawn to do anything with them at that time. And it was about 2 years later, I suddenly again got the nudge, do something with these. So I thought, okay, what am I going to do with them? So then it just came to me, test them. So I sort of contacted as many people as possible in Cyprus that I knew. I also contacted people that I worked with, not at that time online, but since have done, and sort of emailed people and wrote to people, would you be interested in trying this out for me? I'm not quite sure how it's going to go, but, and people were quite willing. In the end, I had approximately 200 people between the ages of 16 and 80, both male and female. And what I did with the majority of them face to face that I could do it with, I took a full case history of them. So I went through on every level, mental, emotional, spiritual, sexual, physical, their dreams, their hopes, their wishes, any health problems they had, any sort of issues, they had it all. And I sort of noted it all down. I gave them a bottle. I asked them to take 3 drops 3 times a day until the bottle was finished. There was a month's supply. And out of the group, I gave a certain amount a placebo. Obviously, nobody knew who had the placebo except me. So I asked them to keep a diary. Nothing too, it didn't have to be too detailed, but to keep a sort of a daily diary. And at the end of the month, and then we did it for another month and another month. So basically I had 3 months gathered. And I met with them all again. I went through the information with them to see what's changed, what's got better, what stayed the same, what about your dreams, anything unusual happen, etc. And through all their information, I realized, wow, this plant is powerful, and particularly for women. Now, the interesting thing was the men who took it found they became more creative.
Mm-hmm.
So it obviously was connecting in with their feminine side. For the women, a lot of women reported, some of them actually reported issues they hadn't even bothered mentioning to me. And it was only when, for example, one woman said, I've had this terrible lower back pain since I had my last child, and it's cleared, it's gone. Women who were having difficulty with their menstrual cycle were reporting that things had evened out and things had got better, etc. So anyway, it all seemed to be very informative, good results. So I bottled it at that point. I wasn't doing anything about it. I certainly wasn't sort of going public with it. But I thought, well, if I have any clients that I feel could use this in some way, I can give it to them. So then I produced a couple of more flower essences after that, which again, I tested in the same way. However, the hibiscus has turned out to be quite magical. So I've had a couple of situations here in Cyprus with women. One lady in particular has never had a problem getting pregnant, but wasn't able to carry the pregnancies past a certain point. I had 2 or 3 other ladies who couldn't get pregnant. And all of those ladies carried pregnancies successfully and delivered. So I like to say there are at least 4 hibiscus babies on the island at the moment.
That's so nice to hear.
Which is wonderful.
Yeah.
And it has also helped a lot of other ladies who just had, feminine problems, whether it was about their self-esteem, their image, how they saw themselves, their self-worth. And it's very helpful even on those levels. So it's working on many levels. And basically, I see the flower essences as a spirit going into the body and sort of doing a scan of the body and saying, okay, that bit's fine, that bit's fine. Yeah, but I need to hone in here. So by taking it and taking it regularly, as I suggest, it does build up gradually in the system and it does its work. Yeah. So they are the only ways that I work with flower medicine here. I certainly don't work with sacred plants here, which are indigenous to other countries. I do have experience working with them personally. However, that's not my gift this lifetime to facilitate that. I do know there are various places in Europe, and it's also happened in Cyprus, where people have brought sacred plants and run ceremonies. And unfortunately, the reports back are not good about those situations. So anybody that knows me and knows that I've got experience working with them personally, I can help them prepare and I can advise them where to go in South America to have a good experience.
Yeah.
But certainly I don't work with them. I don't facilitate them in Cyprus.
Yeah, that's good to know. It's so interesting about the hibiscus tincture. Do you still provide that? Is it available on your website? Because you have me sold.
It's on the website along with the others. I provide it free. The reason I provide it free, I've always, particularly since I moved to Cyprus, I've always done voluntary work. And up until last year, I volunteered both in the Samaritans helpline. I did that for 7 years, and it sort of coincided with me then volunteering in a local hospice, where I worked with people who were end of life, or they had Alzheimer's, or they were on respite care. So for me, it's about having a balance in my life, because I've got skills that I earn money from. So there's an exchange of energy, and I like to give back. So when I finished in the hospice last year, I was looking at, okay, I need something else where I can still have the balance. So I thought, my flower essences. So I don't charge for them, I give them to people. All I ask is that they take them regularly, and not sort of put it in the cupboard and forget about it.
Yes. Do you recommend people take it during, like, for 6 weeks or 3 months, or?
Well, it depends. Usually, particularly with, let's say, women's problems, particularly if it's a chronic problem, I'd maybe give them 3 months supply. As I say, it depends. If it's something that's not chronic, it's just acute, maybe just 1 month supply.
Yeah.
And they are totally safe to take, even if somebody is on orthodox medication. It's not going to interfere with that. In fact, they're very, very safe to take, because it's not like a herbal remedy. You're taking the essence of the plant, not the actual plant itself. And it's preserved in organic brandy. Now, if somebody has a problem with alcohol, it can just go into water as long as they keep it in a fridge.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the question that's coming to my mind is about healing the feminine.
Okay.
What is your experience about balancing the masculine and the feminine, or especially over the last year, 6 months, or 2 years? What's your experience?
Well, personally, I suppose until I actually started my own healing process around the feminine, I didn't actually realize how much I was operating out of my masculine. Okay. And that was something I did pretty much half my life. Because I had to. From a very early age, I realized I had to take care of myself. And I also realized I chose the role of surrogate mother in my family. Not consciously, but obviously on some subconscious level. And being in that role, I was the one that was called on when there was a crisis. I'd drop everything, be totally and completely there 100%, organize everything and everybody, and be the calm one. And when the whole thing then was finished, I'd come home, and then I'd have the nervous breakdown quietly to myself. So I had that role subconsciously my whole life, until I began the process of healing my own feminine. And that was over a long period of time. It started back as early as a couple of months after Michelle was born, my youngest daughter. And unfortunately, I had very bad postnatal depression. And I went through the usual process at that time in the 80s that you would go through, which is you go to the doctor, they put you on medication, you walk around like a zombie, you behave like a robot, and it gets you nowhere. So eventually I went to a psychiatrist whose answer to my problem, and it was a male psychiatrist, whose answer to my problem at the time was, well, why don't you go home this evening and meet your husband at the front door with a bottle of champagne and his dinner? And at that point, I said to him, my husband at the moment doesn't know whether his suitcase or his dinner will meet him at the door because of how I am. And of course, at that point, I decided I ain't coming back here anymore. So I then went into counselling. And during that process of counselling, my presenting problem was not the issue in the long run. So having spent years in counselling and going back and having memories, particularly back to my younger childhood, where I remembered through flashbacks that I had been sexually abused by 3 teenage boys. And during this process, as you can imagine, it's not just a case of, oh, I remember this, so now I'm going to heal it. Because the questions come up, well, who was minding me? I was 3 years of age. Why was nobody taking care of me? How did this happen? How could it let it happen? And then also, it explained to me why I had nightmares my whole childhood. I sleptwalked my whole childhood. Within a short period of time after the abuse happened, I developed huge abscesses on my backside. How did that happen? Nobody could explain it, and I can remember those being lanced off in a doctor's office and not being able to sit. So I went through the process of counselling, and through that process, realising as the years went on, because this didn't just happen over, the counselling wasn't just sort of 6 months of counselling. I was going for years. And then I took a break, and then something happened that triggered me, so I went back into counselling again. And also during this process, I began to study the methods of counselling and psychotherapy, because, with everything I do, I like to know what it's about, etc. And it was during this process, I kept having this sense, she's over there and I can't pull her in. Part of me was missing. And I kept thinking to myself, well, how can I heal if I'm not fully here? And then it was only through shamanism that I got that part of myself back, that I had a soul retrieval done. So that relates back to the healing method I was speaking to you about. And when I got my 3-year-old back, it was like somebody had put a 10-foot rod in my back. I suddenly became this warrior person who nobody is ever going to do that to me again. And again, during this process, I realized this warrior has been coming out my whole life. And I'm very much in this masculine energy of fighting, of defending, of being the fixer, being the problem solver. So then I started to do a series of workshops with women, particularly focused on the feminine and the feminine sexual energy. And I found those so powerful. And at the same time, there was an inner battle going on to embrace this part of myself. And I had to start in very, very small, gentle ways, like having a bath instead of jumping in the shower, quick shower and out, having a bath and enjoying it, standing in front of a mirror and looking at myself. I never did that. I never did. Never looked at myself from head to toe and thought, not bad, or, I never did. I never complimented myself. I never criticized myself because I never looked at myself. So that again was a process which took many, many years. And I really believe the hibiscus was very helpful also. And I feel that the hibiscus was kind of my gift back around the healing of the feminine. So the balance, I still go into my masculine a lot. However, I'm very aware of the balance now. But I think it's one of these things, apart from whatever country we're brought up in or whatever's going on around us, a lot has to do with your role in the family and how you saw yourself, or the role you were put in, either wittingly or unwittingly, and the role you choose to take. So I think that's For many other people, I'm sure it's completely different, but that was my experience.
Yeah, I know what you mean. And would ancestral trauma be carried down in your experience throughout your clients?
Oh,
Or
yeah.
yes.
Oh, yeah. Even myself, it's one of the things I used to do a lot with my groups. We would do a series of work around ancestral clearing. And it was usually, okay, the first thing they would do is make a journey, a shamanic journey, to meet the ancestor who wants the healing. With me, when I did this work before, I always do work before I introduce it into a group. I do it myself to see, what happens, what's involved. And for me, it was around the impoverished feminine. Now, I grew up in a family that was not poor. We weren't rich, but my father had a very good job. Both my parents were well educated. Two of us went to boarding school, so there was money for school. We lived comfortably, so I suppose, for want of a better word, middle class. However, my mother would have had this thing of she's buying wallpaper, for example, and she really loves the peach wallpaper, but it happens to be 50 cents dearer a roll than the wood chip paper. And the wood chip was that horrible, with pieces of wood in it, that everybody bought and then painted. And rather than buy the one she liked, she would buy the cheaper one. So there was this theme of the impoverished feminine. I grew up with it. And I realized I don't want my girls to grow up with this theme, and I don't want it to continue. So I journeyed backwards and I met the original woman where it started with, which was many, many generations back. And I did the whole process of work of talking with her, meeting her, asking her why, and then meeting all the women that it had affected and bringing them all forward to walk through abundance and to heal this and change it. So yes, I do believe ancestral stuff does affect us sometimes. We can carry patterns in our DNA. We can carry unresolved things through life. And it's important to heal them, yes. Unlike past life stuff, which is like such a trendy word. People love to say, oh, I think I've got a past life issue. Oh, I think I've got problems from past life. I'm not in any way disrespecting that. It is possible that you can carry things through from a past life, but I prefer to keep people focused on the life you're actually living now. And let's look at the issue now and why it's repeating itself. And maybe the source of the problem is in this lifetime. Of course, if all else fails, yes, we can look at past lives, But again, as I say, that's very different to clearing ancestral trauma or pain or whatever.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I've got goosebumps throughout this whole last half an hour. What advice would you give somebody to help them, both men and women, balance the masculine and feminine? You mentioned a few things like taking a bath and just admiring themselves in the mirror. What other tips would you give?
Well, for women particularly, things like that, because my experience with women has been that, if I suggest things like start simple, start with little things like have a nice bubble bath, put on some music, light a candle, get a glass of wine, whatever. Initially they'll say, oh, I don't have time, I've got kids, make the time, you're worth it. So to start knowing their self-worth, and they can be creative and in their feminine in many, many ways, whether it's how they dress, maybe through journaling, and maybe through painting, music. Dance is such a wonderful way to get in touch with your feminine. For men, it's a little bit different. I suppose when I think of my own shamanic practice, I get more women coming to me than men. And in general, the men that are open and do come to me, they're already in touch with their feminine side. They're already fairly creative.
Yeah.
However, I can also make flower essences up to help men.
Yeah.
But as I say, in general, men that are open to having shamanic help, they've already been open to other things,
Very interesting. And you hold ceremonies in Cyprus. Do you hold retreats as well, or what offerings do you have face-to-face?
Well, at the moment, and certainly for the past last year and part of this year, it's just been one-to-one work. Some circle work with a group that did training with me. This year, or rather I should say, I won't be planning any workshops until next year. This year is sort of sorted. So what I do is the same as I did in Ireland, except in Ireland I had my own place where I did the work from, and people came and stayed. So I did the accommodation, the food and the workshops. Here I've sourced a really wonderful Cypriot family-owned hotel on the beach. They have 2 amazing seminar rooms. And it's wonderful that I don't have to figure out the accommodation and the food, just to let them know it's vegetarian food. And I run the workshops there at that hotel. And the family are very open to any sort of groups, like yoga groups, shamanic groups, whatever. I'm also involved with another hotel near me in Lecce, which is the Anassa Hotel. I'm in my 9th season working there. I'm what they call a bespoke experience, which is interesting. So it's the guests at the hotel, if they want to have a shamanic experience, I go there and work with them one-to-one or as couples. I also do a lot of presentations for travel agents and sort of the paparazzi type magazines, travel blogs, that type of thing, as part of, presenting the hotel abroad. So that's where I would get a lot of my international clients from the hotel. I don't run the seminars there purposely because they don't have a big enough seminar room to hold them.
And obviously online as well. This, like you said.
I work a lot online. Yeah. In fact, I think it was last year we had what I called my European group. So I had people from Switzerland, France, the UK, Ireland, all in a circle online, and we worked online.
How would somebody get in contact with you if they were interested in working with you?
Well, I've got a website, which is shamancirclecyprus.com, or they can just Google or AI my name, Triona Martin or Triona Martin Andronike, and I come up all over Google. My phone number, my email address is there. I'm also on social media. So there's plenty of ways of contacting me. And, people always find me when they're ready to find me.
Yes,
which is interesting. It's very interesting.
Yes, it's true.
I had a lady recently, she was a guest at the hotel, and it wasn't her first time at the hotel. She'd been coming there for years. And I said, I don't believe you've ever come to me before for shamanic work. And she said, no, I haven't. But yet she said, I saw you every year I came because there's a little brochure. But she said this year felt right.
Yeah.
And so, I think that's the way it kind of works with this business. It's not one of these things where you can, a shamanic practice isn't something that you can go out and pull people in off the street or advertise it or, one thing I've noticed about Cyprus It's sort of behind Ireland and other countries insofar as working with natural things.
Mm-hmm.
And in many ways, what I've noticed, people want the quick fix.
Mm-hmm.
What I call fast food for the soul, McDonald's.
Yeah.
And I don't do the McDonald's. I do the gourmet meal. I do the deep fix.
Mm-hmm.
And for a lot of Cypriots, that's not what they're looking for. They want the quick fix. They want to do the one-day workshop that's going to give them a piece of paper. They want to learn something really quickly. They're not prepared to sort of work long-term. And particularly with my training groups, apart from the basic workshop, which is a weekend workshop, the advanced training is 4 workshops over a year with continual work in between.
Mm-hmm.
So unless they're really sort of dedicated to the process, they won't do it.
Yeah.
That's
fair enough.
Mm.
You have to commit to the process.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And I believe if you want to do, I know personally, when I wanted to do workshops or attend workshops, I got on planes, I got on trains, I got in cars, and I got there in order to do them and to be present,
Yeah, totally. Everything will align if it's right for the person.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Definitely. Well, thank you so much for your wonderful story and telling us everything about you and how to contact you. It's been such a lovely conversation.
Well, thank you so much, Sarah, for having me. And it's turned out to be a very comfortable afternoon, thanks to you and thanks to the aircon.
Oh, really? My heart is full after that episode. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. I'd like to thank you once again for listening and taking the time to open your ears, your heart, and your mind. Check out Trina's links in the show notes. I hope you benefited from the podcast, from that episode, just as much as I did. I'm so grateful. Thank you so much for listening. From my heart to yours. Take care.